I would like to thank the American Congress of Rehab Medicine for inviting me to speak on a topic near and dear to my heart, leadership in academic medicine. I was given the opportunity last year to do a 90-minute opening plenary session for the ACRM Congress. And in that talk, I spoke about the challenges of integrating post-acute care providers in today's healthcare system. And I was quite direct about some of the needs that we have to transform healthcare. And I also laid out an agenda about how we need to prepare the next generation of rehab providers to meet the needs of an ever-growing disabled and elderly society. And I was bold in that presentation, and I challenged all of us. So in that presentation, and after that presentation, I was overwhelmed by the positive response and was constantly approached at the meeting about what a powerful message that was. And I thought, what a great reward and job well done. Now, for those of you who are new to the organization, I just want to remind you about the mission of the ACRM. The mission is to improve lives of those with disabling conditions through interdisciplinary rehabilitation research. And it is the largest and the first organization that built a program and an agenda and a mission not to just recruit physicians or nurses or therapists or sociologists or health services researchers, but to build a community of collaboration to meet the needs to provide evidence for practice. Now, the most important thing about the ACRM, which I can attest is true, one of their core values and stated on their website, you will be welcomed no matter where you come from and who you are. We are inclusive. Now, after that presentation last year, Dr. Debbie Baucus invited me to do this lecture for the Women's Leadership Forum. And I said, no problem, Debbie, I'll be glad to do that. But there was a conflict. I have to be in Newport, Rhode Island for a presentation this morning, and I don't trust the friendly skies to get me from Newport to Atlanta for a 5 o'clock presentation. I'd have to ensure the plane took off on time, it landed on time, and I could get through the Atlanta traffic. Now, I am a force of power sometimes, but I have no optimism that this will work. So then I said, no problem. We'll have options. So Debbie spoke to the ACRM leadership. We'll just video Pam in, or maybe she could do the presentation and we'll just videotape it. And I thought, well, this is going to be boring. I am not here just to speak or give you data. I am here to inspire you. So I had an idea. Let's do a TED-like talk. Now, everyone in this room has seen a TED-like talk. And it doesn't matter that whether you're in the audience or not. I frequently go to YouTube and watch them. And if you're an effective speaker, it's very inspiring. But I started preparing for this TED-like talk, and I pulled out all of my books in my office on leadership. And I can't say I reread all of them, but I scanned them, and I got some themes. And I also listened to TED Talks, the 30 top-rated TED Talks on leadership. And I thought, oh, well, I can do this. And if you listen to all those talks, if you read all those books, and you use qualitative research methodologies, you can quickly identify a theme of 20 words. And here they are. 20 words. Every TED Talk, every book talks about these attributes of leadership. And yes, they are required. And our new CEO at Wake Forest Baptist Health really focuses on resilience. And there's another important feature called risk of failure. Now, you are in this audience today because you are risk takers. If you've ever prepared a grant in your life and submitted it, do you know that your probability of failure is anywhere from 80 to 90%? And even if you get funded, which we just got a 10th percentile score, you might not be funded for a couple of years. Now that's risk-taking behavior. So honestly, we have all of these attributes. But wait a minute. When I listened to those 30 TED Talks, I realized it's not the words. People tell stories. They inspire you by talking about their experience. You're not here to do your typical academic presentation of here's the data. You're here to translate the data into meaningful points and to tell true stories. And I said, oh, whoa, don't want to do this. Pam Duncan is going to stand up in front of 3,000 colleagues and say, I have a lot of imperfections, and I'm really scared, and I'm vulnerable. So then I thought, well, I've got a good reason not to come to Atlanta. That plane can't get me there. The videotape would be boring, and I'm just simply not going to do it. I will not make myself that vulnerable. And then I reflected, who am I not to make myself vulnerable? I am a very senior woman. I'm a grandmother. I've accomplished more than I ever thought I would in my entire career. And in some days, I think I've made a difference, and some days I don't. I've mentored men, I've mentored women, and just last week, one of the greatest rewards of my life was a young male that I mentored while I was at Duke University when he was being marginalized. And I recognized his talent, and excuse my language, but I kicked his ass. And you know what? You will not be marginalized. You are intelligent. You might be a good old boy from West Virginia, but you're going someplace. And last week, he received a $2.1 million NIH award, his first R01. Who am I not to tell you my stories? Who am I not to be vulnerable? So I'm afraid. But then there was another book that just came out, published 2 weeks ago in September, Brené Brown, called The Quest for True Belonging, The Courage to Stand Alone, Braving the Wilderness. Now, of all the leadership books I've read, and of all of her books I've read, this was a gift from God at this point in my life. Because reading her book inspired me to be vulnerable and to tell you the stories behind the statistics. So in Brené Brown's book, she talks about belonging. We all want to belong. But what is it to really belong? What does it mean to belong? We have an environment, a political environment, a culture of exclusion that's existing every day in our lives. But every human species and every species wants to belong. But Brené Brown talks about belonging in this definition from the wisdom of 8th graders. Belonging is being accepted for you. Fitting in is being accepted for being like everyone else. And if I get to be me, I belong. If I have to be like you, I fit in. Now, many of you know me throughout my career, and I think you probably know I'm not always worried about fitting in. But there's a price to pay when you don't want to fit in. So then I reflected again on the ACRM values of cultivating diverse leadership requires an environment of inclusion, requires an environment where we can motivate and role model belonging. And I can tell you that is the experience and my experience in this organization. You will be welcomed no matter who you are. So we have all these exclusions in life. We have gender exclusion, we have religious exclusion, we have racial exclusion, we exclude those with disabilities, and we have exclusion because professionally who we are. Doctors exclude nurses, nurses exclude doctors, therapists exclude doctors. We have these silos of exclusion. We exclude all the time. And I'm here to tell you, it is not going away. I am not optimistic in any capacity that we'll ever live in a perfect world. It will not happen. It hasn't for decades, it hasn't for thousands of years. We've had religious wars, we have exclusion in art, we have exclusion in history, and we have plenty of exclusion in medicine. So, what should we do? So now I'm going to tell you 3 stories of exclusion. I'm going to tell you one related to gender. I'm going to tell you one about professional disciplines. And I'm going to tell you one about style. And then I'm going to share with you the tools that are used to exclude people. Bullying, pay inequity, and marginalization. So my goal here, when I tell you from my heart these stories, is not to enrage you. It is truly to inspire you. To inspire you that things will happen, but what will we do? Will we be the change that we want to see in the world? So let us go back to Brene Brown's book. In order to be able to have a presence in the spirit that we live every day and we want to live, but in a society that excludes many segments, we have to have a wild heart. We have to be able to stand up for ourselves and our beliefs, and we have to belong rather than fit in. And we have to have a strong back and a soft heart, an idea that I'll explore with you more. And last, we have to know why. Why do we get up every day and why do we live? What is our purpose in life? Why do we show up at work? Why? Because if you don't have a why, you can't have a wild heart, and you certainly will never have a strong spine. So let me just share with you a few stories. First of all, I'm going to try to avoid mentioning names to protect those, the innocent, or even institutions, because I've been in 4 academic institutions in my entire career. And I can tell you these issues in one form or another are at every one of them. My career has been at Duke University, the University of Kansas, the University of Florida, and Wake Forest. And in every institution, there's some form of these exclusions that take place. So just forget the name and quit trying to guess where I'm talking about, and let's talk about some real stories. So the first one is I'm going to tell you about sex differences in physician salaries or all healthcare providers' salaries, and not give you the statistic. In fact, this article published in the Journal of American Medical Association, the statistics say, adjusting for everything else, women physicians make at least $20,000 less than their male counterparts. That's the statistics, but let me tell you a story. Several years ago, I was actually called up by the leadership of a university and said, you will take this interim chair in this program. And I said, well, no, sir, I'm not interested in that. You will take this interim chair in this program because we just removed a woman leader, a national leader, and we need to replace this chair position with a woman. I said, whoa, Sunday afternoon I'm sitting and I'm getting this message. I like the institution. They'd been good to me. I'd had great career there. I said, okay, Pam's coming along, and I am going to be an interim chair. Well, within weeks of being in that position, I realized it wasn't the prior woman's leadership problem. We got major problems here. Major problems in this culture, in curriculums, in student affairs, in faculty management, and in pay equity. And I sat there and I said to some of my colleagues, really, is this true? We have such an oppressive leader, and this is happening in this university? Oh yes, it's all true, but the previous woman leader wouldn't do anything about it. In reality, it really wasn't her. This was a corrupt culture with a very oppressive leader. And I said, excuse me, there is not a thing here in my cultural values, in my personal integrity, or my professional goals will I ever be the face of leadership in this environment. But what am I going to do? I'm going to have a wild heart. And I'm going to tell you, there were lots of issues there, but one of the most was a faculty member, woman faculty member, who had been diagnosed with breast cancer and uterine cancer, had left the institution, but came back as a consulting faculty member. And she is one of the most gifted teachers in the world and has a large contribution to this curriculum. And I looked, and there were her contracts. Pennies on the dollar to men who were being paid under the contract. And her contract had been not paid in 8 months. And I called her in and I said, come here. I know her, I'd known her for years, and I said, come here, what was it? Well, you know, the former woman leader wouldn't do anything about it. And I said, well, I'm going to do something about it. First of all, why are you doing this? She had a why. She still has a why. She's an award-winning and just got a big national award for her contributions, not just to this program, but to the entire medical school. Well, it really doesn't matter to me. My husband is a very affluent physician. I really don't need the money. And I looked at her and I said, excuse me, you will not prostitute yourself. There are women out there who don't have affluent husbands who come to work every day because they need pay equity. Now look, I have all these issues here. I cannot fight your battles. You go pull all your papers together, you go to this leadership and you say, pay me. Really? She was a very calm, caring person. I said, sorry, if you don't do that, can't show up at work tomorrow. These violate human resource rules. So she took it on, and she got an email from the leadership. And you know what they called her? A troublemaker. So I said, okay, I sent you out there to fight the battle. Now let me tell you something else. I'm going to come back in the rear, and I'm going to protect you. I took that email to the leadership, and I said, you can't possibly want this to be exposed in public. Fix it. And they fixed it. There were a lot of issues in that university, and I am proud to say that I was the turnaround queen for that program. And I knew that my days there would be numbered because I chose to have a wild heart. But I led with integrity, and I risked everything to do it. And I'm proud to say that now that program is thriving in that university with all the expectations that you should have accepted, and that program is now out of the direction of that oppressive leader, and they are soaring. They are reaching all their potential. But I'm also sad to say it wasn't a woman who could do it. It was a bunch of men. And in preparing this TED Talk, I went to their website, and here are the statistics of women distribution now. And that faculty on their picture. 14 faculty, 10 men, 4 women, and only one woman research scientist. That's a solution to get rid of pay inequity and gender bias. And now, probably the most hurtful event that ever occurred to me in my life. And I'm going to try to tell you without crying, because I still have post-traumatic stress. It was the war of professional disciplines. I had left a university and I was recruited into an endowed position to come into a college of health professions to build a huge research agenda in probably one of the most reputable college of health professions at that time. Remember when I say at that time in this country. And I personally, I'm not a physician, but I've spent my entire career in medical schools. And so here I was. I made Pam Duncan magic. I got to that university, and literally within 2 years, I had brought millions of dollars, over $25 million by partnerships with the Department of Veterans Affairs. I had established a national center. I had brought numerous dollars in to support faculty in every one of those programs in that college. And you better believe my boss loved me. Until one day, just one day, I was called, and we say it in this university, up the hill. And the chancellor and the dean of the medical school asked me, well, my goodness, Pam Duncan, you seem to be able to make magic. We have a problem with one of our centers, and we want you to come and lead this center. And I said, well, no, sir, I can't. I'm not a physician. You need a physician leadership. And they were going to give me $135,000. And I said, well, no, sir. Number one, you need a physician. Number two, you're going to have to offer that person millions of dollars to build your program. And number three, you failed miserably 3 times. And why have you not achieved success? And they're like, whoa, who is this woman? And I said, I'm just being honest with you. I can't deliver for you. But I tell you what I will do. I will go out and I will recruit a physician, because I'm very well known in this world, in this community, and we will build this program at this university. I went out, recruited that person. They didn't give him $135,000, but they gave him millions of dollars. And let me tell you right now, this is one of the most successful programs in this country, in a state that certainly needs this program. Whoa, guess what happened? That dean got really mad at me. I was invited to meet with the higher university administration when he wasn't invited, and now I was going to help the School of Medicine, and he wanted this program in his program. So what did he do? He called all the department chairs around, and they were going to show me. They brought me into a room, and this was not a 360 peer review, but I was berated and humiliated for 2 hours. They identified every weakness I had, and some I didn't have, and they berated me. I suspected what was coming, and I even read this book, How to Have a Difficult Conversation. And here I was trying to figure out how to have a difficult conversation, and I was being bullied. And to tell you this wasn't a 360-degree peer review, one of my colleagues, who's still with that university in a leadership position, said, you know what? We opened her chest, and we're not going to let her leave until we close it. And what did Pam Duncan do? I got up. I did not lean forward. I stood up, and I said to everyone in that room, let me tell you something. You opened my chest, but you forgot to see what was inside. You forgot to see the heart. You forgot to see the why. That my entire career has been built around bringing physical therapists and occupational therapists and speech and language pathologists to the level of evidence-based practice that we could work on equal grounds with our colleagues in medicines and provide the next generation of science. You forgot to see the why in my heart. And I walked out. I got on a plane, had to be in Washington that night. I sat and I looked outside that window all night and I cried. And when I got to my hotel room, I sobbed. I know that that hotel shook because I was uncontrollably sobbing. How could I have worked so hard and brought so many resources to such an important program and to be berated and bullied and humiliated? I was out of control. I got up. I called the dean of the medical school, and I called the chancellor, and I said, I'm leaving this meeting. I want an audience with you as soon as I get back. They saw me. I told the story, and they were incredibly supportive. They called that dean in, and they said, we will never have a witch hunt here. And by the way, she will never return to the College of Health Professions. And I never did. I didn't even go back to clean up my office. But you know what? I failed. I failed miserably. Because in doing that, I had really now, I stayed there in that leadership, finished that center, finished my contract. I failed. I went into severe depression. Severe. And my husband would pick me up at night and say, "You will not quit." And I went forward. Now I want to tell you, as the Peter Principle applies, that dean didn't stay at that university long, but he went on to be a provost of a university, and lo and behold, he became the president of one of the major state universities in this country. Well, I didn't even know that until last November, and I thought, well, let me look at the website. Well, in December, with 6 months left to go in this contract, the Board of Trustees of this university removed this president. And guess what for? I wasn't there, I don't know, but I can tell you what the newspaper says, and it might have all been fake news, but the university's best interest would have been to keep him there for 6 more months. But he was removed, according to the news, for bullying, hostile work environment. And I do not know, I bet there was a gender preference for that. Now you might say to me, Pam's telling that story, so isn't that what goes around comes around? No, I'm not telling you that story for that reason, because people are neither good or bad. This man had incredible abilities, and in fact, I suffered a major head trauma falling down 14 steps in this institution. And I can tell you, the first one who was standing over my bed when I woke up was him. And when the hospital called me the night before I was to go into surgery, now that I was a workman's comp case and I couldn't go to surgery because work comp wouldn't pay that rate, he was on the phone and I was in surgery at 8:30 the next morning. So all I'm asking is the power to forgive. And we've lost a great talent in this man. And in fact, this university administration knows that, because you know what they did as part of his package? If you want to stay in this university in any capacity, you will take a leadership development course. But let me tell you the last thing. Bullying, pay inequity, excluding women, those are malignant. They are malignant cancers. But you know what a slow-growing tumor is? Marginalization. We marginalize people. We bring them to the table, we send them nice emails, we patronize them, and then we go behind the scenes because they don't fit in. They don't have the same style that we do. They don't have the same whatever. So we bring them to the table, we put them there as tokens, and we might even give them nice emails. But they marginalize you. So I'm going to bring this story close to home. You know, I have a lot of flaws, and many of you in this audience have known me for years, and you could probably identify all of them. But one of my real flaws is I talk too much. It is really a handicap. Is there anybody who's ever been engaged with me that says, Pam Duncan doesn't, she talks too much? Well, let me confess to you, talking too much is a compensation for a disability I have. I drive my colleague Shura Bushnell crazy sometimes. And I drive her even crazier when she receives my emails. Because you see, I can't spell. And you see, I can't write very well. I do not have the elegance of my colleague Sylvia Coleman. When you see a brilliantly written email from me, Sylvia wrote most of it. And if you see a good one with me, it takes her 2 minutes to write that email. It takes me about a half an hour. So when you receive emails from me, it's boom, boom, boom. And you know, I'm so inappropriate sometimes, and Christina Condon, my colleague, can tell you, one day I was trying to motivate the team, and I was trying to tell everybody what a great job, and instead of saying, all things are possible, I wrote, all thongs are possible. I sent out a medical note one time. Instead of saying activities of daily living, I said activities of daily loving. It's a problem. But I have a brilliant mind, and I also have the brilliant ability that I've learned to compensate. You give me an idea, and I can spew it out just like that. I can organize for Dr. Bushnell, or Dr. Hawk, or Dr. Bashir, or the former CEO, Dr. McConnell. Here's what you need to do it, okay? Right? You all know it, right? That is my compensation. That's why I talk too much. So in my current organization, that's who I am. And I value being parts of centers. And so a few years ago, a center was holding a very important retreat that I'm very passionate about. But the leader of that center came to me and said, Pam, you know, we've invited you, but we can't invite you again because you talk too much. And he took me off the table to never return. And in this particular center at this institution, I also am Pam Duncan Direct. We've been doing research this many ways, and I have benefited all my life from millions and millions of dollars of funding by this mechanism. But you know what? It's not making any difference. Let's change our agenda. Let's transform our work so that it truly impacts healthcare on the front lines. That was innovation, but they're being successful. Why would they listen to me? But I kept messaging that, and I was over and over marginalized. I wasn't invited to that meeting. When we had a big external advisory board on a program that I had developed for this institution, I was not allowed to present it. Someone else was. Guess what gender he was? And, by the way, I also am and still continue to be a major architect of a huge intervention project that's led by Yale, UCLA, and Harvard. And we were going to present it as a representative to the center, and guess who was not invited to present it? The statistician who knew nothing about the intervention. Okay, I don't fit in. I'm used to not fitting in, not a problem. I'll just stay here because this is a valuable center. And I have incredible support from an incredible cardiologist, geriatric cardiologist, that we have a national program. But whoa, they crossed the line. I was recruited to Wake Forest Baptist Health by Dr. Allison Bashir. Then I'm going to tell you more about her in a minute. And quickly after being recruited here, I was loaned to the 10th floor. And I was loaned to the 10th floor to understand what drove our readmissions. And I worked Pam Duncan magic in 5 months, brought in all the forces, and knew the root cause of all of our readmissions. And there are many root causes of readmissions. But one of them is the post-acute space. How do we build partnerships? I gave the message last year really built on some of that experience to understand at the grassroots level what are the challenges in post-acute care. And also went to a national meeting of Kindred, which is now the largest post-acute provider in the country, and gave a presentation of the same magnitude, and 500 people gave me a standing ovation. But I came home, and somebody in that audience didn't like what I said, went to the leadership and said, we don't want her involved in this issue. Now, the actual leadership didn't say this. And all of a sudden, this group started having meetings without me and actively telling people, don't tell her we're having this meeting. That was the line. Something that's near and dear to my heart, and I literally got up and I walked away from the table. So I have a wild heart. I have a strong spine, but I don't always have such a soft front. I'm pretty straightforward. And it's to the point that excuse me, Remy, I'm going to be Pam Duncan Direct. And I preface everything I say, but well, here's Pam Duncan Direct. I just want to have a softer front. But sometimes wild hearts can experience cardiac arrest. I have a why in my life. I've always had a why. Driven by the health of my mother, her total unempowerment to manage her health care, and I've had a passion to improve the health of those who've had stroke. I believe that if we're going to spare a life, we need to save a life. We need to help them to manage their health problems and to improve. And to every one of those, there's a face. And this is the face that inspires me as part of the Compass team, is Gladys Lindy. Gladys is our patient advocate. Very early age, had a massive stroke, lived in nursing homes, never gave up, became rehabilitated, and she is one of the most powerful influences in the state of North Carolina for minority and women's health. And she has been instrumental in recruiting us with difficult hospitals. But in order to improve lives, we have to be able to have evidence. We have to have high quality post-acute care. We have to have accountability, and we must have an interdisciplinary team. Now, you can talk about it in the abstract, but when you become the beneficiary of it, my God, you will never forget. I'd spent an entire career talking about interdisciplinary teams. And in October 2014, I got a call that my daughter, who's a nurse, is in catastrophic preeclampsia. And of course, I knew the risk. I was paralyzed when I got on that plane, and I prayed, dear God, all my life, I have worked for the best of healthcare. Please give me that gift today. I can't control this. I don't know if she will live or not have a massive stroke. She's 26 weeks pregnant. Will this happen? And here we go. Dr. Kathleen Witherstone had been a tremendous academic physician with a pedigree so long you would know with the highest level of training. But she, for whatever reason, I have no idea, decided no more and went to a community-based hospital, an HCA hospital, and built, and has built, an exquisite team of practice for high-risk OB, neonatology, and when my grandson got in trouble, personally called the surgeon on vacation, get back here, you're the only one I want to do surgery on this child. And she had no idea who I was and what I did. You know how you always dream of winning the lottery? I always dream of winning the lottery. Do you dream of winning the lottery? What would you do with it? Well, I would tell you the first check I would write would create at the University of Kansas the Kathleen Witherstone Center for Neonatology and Humanistic Caring. I would personally write a check. And what is the outcome of that care? He just failed his first preschool screening for special needs because he's perfectly normal. And he touched the face of God 3 times. And the last time, it was a bedside nurse who recognized, whoo, there's some ever slight problems going on here, and called a rapid response team and saved him from the outcomes of late B strep. When I hold that kid every day, I thank God. And when my friends and colleagues and Meredith's friends say, Meredith, don't you thank God? She says, you know, I thank God, but let me tell you who I think. I think a wonderful interdisciplinary team who worked like a NASCAR team, detected problems early, and spared my son. Thank you. Now, these are stories. They're painful stories. I've lived them, I've experienced them, but it's not about my story. It's not even about my hurt. And it's not about gender. When we choose to exclude individuals by religion or by whatever, we are not doing a good, we're not meeting a societal need. And I can give you all the statistics that 1 in 5 nurses will drop out after the first year. We have high attrition of women who've taken up, excuse me, as my male colleagues say, spaces in medical school. And you know what? All 3 of the major reasons are all fixable. They have been limited in career development advancement, low salaries, and their chair or departmental leadership were not advocates for them. Those are changeable. So now let me tell you what real leadership looks like. Now, a disclaimer, she still writes my check, and I'm not doing this in any way to get any kudos, but I really want to speak from the heart. When I walked away from that experience, that last experience of fitting in, where I'd sat in the C-suite and worked day and night, I would be here at 6 o'clock in the morning and 10 o'clock at night trying to build a strategy to help. I just went into cardiac arrest. Now, during this time, during this 1 year, 2014 to 2015, this is what was going on in my personal life. I just told you about my daughter and grandson. My elder sister died of congestive heart failure. My best friend was dying of ovarian cancer. And my most beloved sister-in-law was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease. And in 2 years is now in a lockdown unit. In 1 year. I had no more space. So I went and said to everybody, I'm going to retire. Okay. Everybody said, Pam Duncan, retire. It was it. And Alison Bashir says, why did you come here? Remember why you came here? Now you're having a little bleep in your life, but I remember the why. You weren't interested anymore in a 27-page CV or a New England Journal article. You really wanted to make a difference. And Pam, we can make a difference. And the great thing about Alison Bashir is she's not just the chair of a department, she's a mother, she's a friend, she's an advocate for women, she's a community servant, she's been the president of the Winston-Salem Women's Foundation, she leads the American Heart Association Walk, and she cares. And she is the most influential advocate for women in Wake Forest Baptist Health. 59% of her new hires are women, and 80% of them are young. And she's not willing to take an old broad and send them out to pasture. Because you know what those guys told me when I wasn't fitting in? They defunded me from their program and told me that I could have a emeritus status in their center. I said, excuse me? I just got a $14 million grant. Is this what emeritus people do? She held me up. She advocated for me. And you know what? Alison Bashir not only has a strong spine, but she has a soft heart. In her office is this sign, keep calm and carry on. And she coached me and she says, Pam, you know, sometimes you really aren't quite as soft as you should be. And you do talk too much, but I'm not going to take you away from the table because of that. So with that, everybody pontificates about learning health systems. Now, Alison Bashir can tell you her own stories of marginalization and being excluded, but those are her stories. But you do not marginalize Alison Bashir's purpose and innovation and support of diversity. And with that, she supported Shura Bushnell, who is a neurologist, under the radar screen. We didn't show up at the 10th floor and show the return on investment before we even knew if it worked. And we created, with Cheryl's brilliant leadership, a transitional care program. And we tested it and we vetted it and we brought it under quality improvement. And we brought the brilliance of clinical practice and science to evaluate it. And it allowed us to beat all odds. Our probability of getting funded was 2%. To bring to the state of North Carolina a pragmatic trial to evaluate post-acute care. We brought it home. It was leadership from Cheryl, a frontline clinician, Allison, who believed in us, and who would not let me go out to pasture. Here's the names of all the people, right? And here are their faces. Now, I've learned a lot in my career. And I have a lot of flaws. I do talk too much. I'm too direct sometimes. I don't go in the room and try to figure out what everybody's agenda is. I just say, what's your agenda? Tell me the agenda and we can get forward and we can move it on. And Robin Gore knows that I can not only do it here, but I can do it in Washington too, right? But I'm always invited back to the table because people understand my sincerity. This is the most diverse group of people I've ever led in my life. primary care, neurologists, nurses, pharmacists, sociologists, speech and language pathologists, health services researchers, epidemiologists, and you know, we all have different styles. And quite frankly, sometimes we get on each other's nerve. But you know what? This team is bounded by one purpose and one passion, because we've been in the field forever, and we know that post-acute care matters. So let me just highlight a few people, okay? First of all, there's Dr. Shura Bushnell, who is a clinical architect of this program, vetted in Wake Forest. She's the co-PI, and probably the most wonderful male colleague I have ever worked with in my life, Wayne Roseman from the University of North Carolina. Wayne, when I came back home 10 years ago, came and said, Pam, we've all had a passion to build this quality improvement program for post-acute care. Let's do it. That was in 2010, and we only got around to it in 2014. There's Sylvia Coleman. Now, you know that hard front I have? She is absolutely the most gracious person I've ever known in my life. And she can write a damn good email. And we are implementing this truly because of her personal connections and her grace and knowledge and experience in 41 health systems across the state of North Carolina. We have therapists, we have young statisticians, we have everything represented here, every discipline. But let me call out two people, Sarah Jones and Misha Sassin. The brilliance of this project is not because of the doctors or the therapists or the nurses or the pharmacists and all the graciousness of Sylvia Coleman, or the great vetting by the frontline clinicians like Sarah and Christina. Every day it operates because we have these two amazing women, a PhD in epidemiology, Sarah Jones, and Misha Sassin, an MPH. And they are brilliant operators, brilliant organizational strategists, and we might get on everybody's nerves once in a while, but I tell you, there are two women that everybody love and respect, and they have a soft front, a strong spine, and they are the tie that binds this incredible talent. Now, let's switch. You know, I've got another problem. I told you about kicking ass with my male colleague at Duke and saying, come here, you can do this, right? Well, some people just, that isn't a good way to handle. And you know, some people really don't have those aspirations or whatever. But my idea is, I'm not very bright, I'm not very smart. How did I get here? You can do this. Well, maybe everybody doesn't have quite as much chutzpah, as I say. But, you know, our idea is not to push people to achieve, but it's to support them, individuals to reach the limitations of their abilities or their goals. Now, I'm here to confess to you, I've told you great things about Alison Bashir, but I was saying a few at Spleetus Deletus last week. So she had this brilliant idea that we were going to put together this NeuroNext grant. And she got a late start because Dr. Hawk in the middle had heard about it, and she said, okay, we can do this. And she put Dr. Hawk, who's a young, not totally young, but had not had experience doing this. He's a little aged. He's more aged today than he was last week. And Nancy Buckheimer, right? And she says, I got to go to Tokyo. Y'all have it done when I get back. I put a lot of makeup on so that I'm not sleep deprived. And so here we go. Dr. Hawk, Nancy Buckheimer, myself, were going to deliver. And she, you know what? She was smarter than we are. She recognized each one of our unique talents, and she had faith that if anybody could do it, we could do it. And I'm proud to say that grant's going in tomorrow. From last week when I would told you it was impossible to do, and it will be one of the proudest submissions that I ever made. And I want to tell you what a privilege it was to work with Isham Hawk. He had never had this level of experience, even though he's a brilliant physician. And guess what Pam Duncan does? She comes in here, okay, we gotta do this, get it together. Okay, and Isham, I will never forget it till the day I die. He looks, he says, well, that's a pretty good idea, Pam, but, and then I said, well, maybe I'm being too direct. Isham, I know Isham, but I don't really know him, and I don't push him too far. I said, Isham, I'm being a little bit direct, but we gotta do this, this, and this. And in the sweetest manner in the whole world that anyone's ever talked to me, he said, Pam, it may not be that you're not communicating right. I might not understand it. Just, the message was, he didn't say it this way, slow down and let me understand. And I slowed down and let him understand. And you know what he did? He walked out of that office. He immediately started sending emails, and he understood before the end of the day. And the most brilliant part of that grant is what Isham wrote, where he talked about the way to prepare the next generation is to pair them with very senior leadership, a junior co-PI, and let them co-lead the grant together. And he wrote that section, and I think he's right. Now I want to make another observation. Does it really matter who we are? Nancy Buckheimer, she still needs sleep. Give her a week off after tomorrow. And who are we? Nancy Buckheimer, she's a mother of a brilliant son that she really is trying to pull through to get there. And she's a Japanese American. Isham is a Muslim American. And I'm a good old white country girl from rural North Carolina, raised on a tobacco farm. And none of these attributes matter. We are a community of diversity, of different values, not different values, but different perspectives, but the same values. Do our demographics really matter? And I bet you Isham's still trying to recover today from me talking too much last week. And I don't know if he'll ever work with me again, but please do. But Alison Brashear knew what she was doing. She could support individuals, and we reached our limitations last week. And some people were advising me to give up, and I said, I'm never giving up if Alison Brashear told me to do it. She believes in me, and we can do this. She believed in Isham, she believed in me, and she believed in Nancy Buckheimer. And I have had $50 million of research funding in my career. And I'm going to tell you, this grant, whether we get funded or not, is one of the proudest moments in my life. And I appreciate the opportunity to work in this environment. But there's another why, and the next why is believe in the next generation. It's not just the patients we treat. We have to believe in these millenniums. We have to believe in them. And they irritate us sometimes, right? But believe in millenniums. And I want to tell you a really quick story. This is from a conference in Raleigh last week, and this is John Doar, a multi-billionaire, the Bill Gates of venture capital. And he was there to speak on a platform for to bring venture capital and entrepreneurs together. And the governor introduced him. The governor of the state introduced him. And his whole talk was about diversity, that if we really are going to expand the world, we've got to have diversity. Well, this man can write anybody a check. And in fact, the reason he's a billionaire, he was the original investor in things you might have heard of, Google and Amazon and Genentech. Well, I couldn't go to his talk because I had a conference call for one of my grants. But Rika Abbott goes, 5 feet, 2 inches, Filipino American from rural North Carolina, grew up in Walnut Cove. And her accent is thicker than mine. She goes to this meeting. And so here we go. John Doar comes off the stage, and every man just runs to the stage. Here's my card, and let me give you my 1 or 2 minute pitch. And what does this 5 foot, 2 inch tall Filipino American from Walnut Grove do? Excuse me, John, I am Rika Abbott. You know, I am so inspired by your talk. My boss is giving a talk like this next week at Wake Forest Baptist Health for the American Congress of Rehab Medicine. Can I tell you about it? And he took her by the hand, let her out, and she was the only one who got a personal card. Might not be able to talk to you before Monday, but I'll talk to you. And she was brave enough to say, "Oh, Mr. Doar, can I take a selfie?" And that's the selfie. That's the new generation. I said, "Oh my God, you didn't really call him John. You were supposed to call him Mr. Doar." "Oh no, Pam, I called him John," right? Different values, different perspective. That woman has moxie, and she says to me one day she's going to be the CEO of the spin-off company we're developing, Wake Forest Baptist Health. And you know what? I'm confident she will be. But then the next one are my grandchildren. In the middle here is my granddaughter. She's beautiful. She's inclusive. She has joy in her heart, and she talks too much. She is loquacious. Oh, Annabelle, just slow down a little bit. And I never want her to be excluded. I never want her to experience the hurt that I have experienced in my life. And so I'm always talking to her about girl power. We got to have girl power. Instead of a wild heart, what's girl power? So I was out visiting them a few months ago, and I had her and her brother, that's her brother right there, and we were swinging back and forth, back and forth. And she was going higher than her 2-year-old brother, and I was saying, girl power. And her little 2-year-old boy says, "No, Nana, it's boy power." And what does Annabelle say? "No, it's girl power and boy power." From the mouth of a 4-year-old. It's going to take girl power and boy power. The boys need to learn from us, and we need to learn from the boys. We truly have to be inclusive. And when all else fails, there's a quote on my desk that I go to every day from Philippians 1:6. "He who has begun a good work in you will see you through." You have to believe it. You have to believe the why. And days you just simply have to pray. And so, yes, I have a strong spine, and I'm trying to get a soft heart. I do have a soft heart. Sometimes I don't always show it in my passion. I want to wish for you a strong spine and a soft front, a why to have courage, a belonging to yourself to act. We will not change the world, but we will be the change that can make the world a different place. And as Maya Angelou said, and Brene Brown talks in her book, the reward is great, but the price is high. So I have a lot of hurts. I have a lot of challenges. I have a lot of scars to prove it. And I pray each day that I do not respond in anger, that I can have the true power of forgiveness, and I don't make people as either good or bad. We all have great qualities, but working together, we can make a difference. But I will never, never, never give up. And the other quote in my office in Piedmont Plaza in Winston-Salem, North Carolina is, "I pray when I meet St. Peter, I have used every talent he gave me." Thank you very much.